Okay. All right, so this is Sawing 101. This will be the first tool that you learn how to use in metalsmithing, and we call this a jeweler's saw, okay? And so there's a couple things to know about the saw itself. There's 3 places where there are these little screws, and these open and close. This one operates the length of the saw, okay? And then these ones hold the saw blade in place. So here's your saw blades. We have different sizes and we'll go over that later, but the saw blade is super skinny and super small, but yes, it does cut through metal. And the way you load this is the teeth need to be out and down. And the best way to figure that out is running your finger gently up and down, and where you feel resistance, that means that the teeth are going down. So when you load your saw, you want to start loading it in the bottom piece, and I kind of anchor it against the table and my body. And so I kind of have it, I loosen it up here, slide it in this little slot, and then I tighten it. And then I look up here and I make sure that there is a little bit of space here so that I can tighten it. It's really important that I do that, slide it in here. And then when I push against the table, I'm creating less space so that when I tighten this, my saw blade is taut. And I want my saw blade to sound like this. Like a high pitch, high E on a guitar, not a bass. That's too loose, okay? When I start sawing, I need to make sure I use wax and go down 1 time. I'm gonna teach you 2 techniques. One is learning how to cut a 90-degree angle and then a curve. And you're gonna notice that you have to pay attention to where your hands are and where the saw is so that you don't cut yourself. So when I start, I'm right in between this bench pin. This is called a bench pin, and there's a V, and that's so that our metal can be supported. So I have it there, the saw is gonna go here, and what I do is I wanna hold this at an angle at first, just to get a little groove going. And then once I have that, the way that you saw correctly and effectively is I want my saw to be straight up and down, and I'm gonna use the entire length of the blade. So I'm gonna come up to this corner, and I'm sawing forward. I'm not pushing super hard. I'm letting the saw do the work, and I'm using the entire length. Now, when I get to the corner, I'm gonna do something called the shimmy. And what I do is my saw blade is kind of I'm moving my saw blade in a fan direction so that I can create a hole. So I'm gonna go like that. And when I feel like I can turn my blade completely, I'll start to do that. And so I'm gonna turn my metal, always turning your metal rather than your saw when you're sawing. And I'm gonna go ahead and saw the rest of that out. When I get to the end, I slow down just so I don't break my saw blade. There you go. Now, second, lube it up again. And then when you're doing a curve, you'll notice that the metal starts to move. And I start the same way, go in here, and then notice I create a V with my hands. I always keep my hands behind the blade the best I can. And I'm gonna come up here using the entire length of the blade. My saw is straight up and down. And I start to turn the metal rather than the saw blade. Now, a couple things can happen. If I get stuck and my blade is stuck, this could be because I am pushing too hard. So I need to ease up. If it's stuck like that for real though, the best way to get that out is twist this bottom part and pull the blade out, okay? And I could continue doing that. I would load it back up, and then I have a choice that I could go either start in the same pathway, and if I start in the same pathway, I do have to kind of move my blade a little bit, or if it makes more sense, I can meet myself from the other side. So I'll keep sawing this, and just notice how the metal's moving rather than the blade, and I'll come all the way to the end. If I break a blade, replace it. Don't use a broken blade. Just put a new one in. And then I'll slow down. Boop. When I set the blade down, I always leave this loose so I don't break it. And that is Sawing 101.